Welcome back, it's me Lou, and I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review. Today we are taking a look at this. It's from Mattel's DC Comics Multiverse. It's Batman, Superheavy Jim Gordon Batman. Okay, this is a much older figure. This came out years ago. And when I say years ago, it came out, I'm trying to see if there's a date. This came out almost 5 years ago. Came out in 2016. So for those of you that do remember, Mattel had the DC license for a very, very, very long time. They had a dedicated 6-inch line of action figures that people were very fond of. They were the DC Universe Classics. It was essentially, there's there's Hasbro and Toy Biz. They had Marvel Legends. DC had their DC Classics. It was kind of like on the same par. So it was very cool. DC invested many, many years giving us practically almost every DC character you could think of. And it kind of, I want to say it almost plateaued. At a certain point, they kind of made every figure, and for whatever reason, they felt the need. I feel this was a mistake. They felt the need to rebrand and remarket the figures. So, they had this long history where the figures were just known as DC Universe Classics. They all came in uniform boxes, which were too big, giant bubbles, and it was awesome because they made every character. But then at a certain point, they rebranded it. They called it DC Comics Multiverse. And they were essentially the same figures. I think there were some upgrades to the molds. And, we kind of got a couple of new sculpts. But they continued the tradition of the Build-A-Figure. And, I don't know, I just kind of have mixed feelings. I think when they rebranded it, I just kind of felt like the line, not that it was an afterthought, but I don't think, it just felt like they didn't put as much care into this line as the Classics line. Because with the Classics line, man, I just remember getting waves upon waves of figures, and they gave us everything, whereas the multiverse stuff, it was just that. It was the multiverse. You'd get a wave, and it's not like the characters would line up. It's not like they're all from the same genre or from the same books. For example, for this wave, you got the Flash. I think that might have been the CW Flash. You got Zoom. You got Jim Gordon Batman. You got the new Batgirl, Hawkman. You got Joker from The Dark Knight Returns. And the Build-A-Figure was this really cool King Shark. But I just remember, for some reason, some of these figures were kind of hard to find. A lot of them would just kind of like, just sit on the shelves and the pegs. And it kind of died a weird, slow death. And DC eventually lost the license to, I think, was it Spin Masters? And now Spin Masters has the line for the kiddie toys. But, thankfully, McFarlane has the license for the larger 7-inch figures, which are incredible. Big fan of the DC figs that McFarlane's putting out. So why am I reviewing this figure? So I bought this figure off of, I think I bought it on Amazon. It was originally priced. No one really wants this figure anymore because it's not really the Batman everyone loves. This was based off a short run where Commissioner Jim Gordon was Batman. It was the subtitle was Superheavy. That's why it's called Superheavy. So for a while, Jim Gordon, I forgot what happened to Bruce Wayne. I couldn't remember if he died or if he was. Oh, I take it back. He was like an amnesiac or something, I think, during this period of time. I think him and Joker were like amnesiac patients, and they would hang out at the park and just like feed birds. And then someone needed to fill in the role as Batman. And I want to say, I think a corporation, for some reason, they took over the role of the Batman responsibility, and they were kind of incorporated with the Gotham City Police Department. And they needed someone to be Batman, and Jim Gordon ended up being Batman. And it was kind of very strange because, for the longest time, Jim Gordon's has always been this older figure. But they kind of like took maybe 15 to 20 years off of Jim Gordon's life and made him a young guy again. And so it wasn't the Jim Gordon that we all know and love. He didn't have his glasses. He didn't have a beard. He didn't have gray hair. Instead, this was a Jim Gordon that was like younger. Jim Gordon that seemed like he came fresh off the Marine Corps. He was a redhead. He had a mohawk, and I loved it. I thought I thought it was such a cool twist because, and, at that point, everyone's been Batman. Every now and then, back in the day, maybe Alfred would pretend he's Batman. Dick Grayson, I think he was Batman 2 or 3 times. So it was such a weird twist to have Commissioner Gordon play Batman, and it was a fun, different spin on the character, and I was very fond of that comic book run. And there were 2. I remember. I think there were only 2 versions of the Superheavy character available. DC Direct made their version of the character, and it came with the giant robot armor. And then Mattel, here is their version of the Jim Gordon Batman. So the reason why I bought this, I already have this figure like twice over. I have them loose that I got secondhand, and I have one on card that's hanging on the wall next to some other DC Multiverse figures. But I bought this guy online because I needed the Jim Gordon head. So the Jim Gordon head, it's a white guy with a red mohawk. And if you look back at some of my videos, not too long ago, I made some custom McFarlane Green Lantern figures. And I needed a red head for my Guy Gardner. And I kind of took a few liberties. I'm like, you know what? Guy Gardner's a redhead. I know there's a red-headed Jim Gordon head floating out there. And it has a mohawk, and I just thought it'd look badass for a Guy Gardner Green Lantern custom. So I bought this figure just for that head. But I didn't mind having this figure a 3rd time over because I love this character so much. And then this body is very bare and basic to begin with, and I do have plans to try to make a custom out of it. So instead of just like yanking this guy out of the box and just throwing him in the bin, I'm like, let's do a review on him. He's cheap on Amazon and on eBay. If this sparks your interest, you can hunt him down. So yeah, here's DC Comics Multiverse Batman Superheavy. It's Jim Gordon. Examining the packaging, it's all right. It's a little bit more streamlined. So if some of you remember the old DC Universe Classics, they were on cards and they had the giant bubbles. It seemed like it was a waste of packaging, but they showcased the figure beautifully. These are nicer. I think these were designed to be more in line with like Marvel Legends and Star Wars Black Series at the time. I think Black Series and Marvel Legends kind of set the standard for how you package a 6-inch action figure. You put them in a box instead of a bubble in a card. So I think Mattel was just taking a page from Hasbro's book. But it was nice. The window frames the character nicely. It does a good job of showing where the accessories are. So this is where the extra Jim Gordon head went. Here's the Build-A-Figure piece for King Shark. There's some nice character artwork. This is actually artist Greg Capullo's artwork from the actual comic. So that's a nice touch. Adds some authenticity to the figure and the product. And again, we have more of the same artwork. And here's all the figures from this wave. And you get all 6 of these, and you can complete King Shark. It would have been nice if they gave you a... Oh, it's right here. Take it back. So there's the bios on the side. It says here, Jim Gordon Batman. After the death of Batman, Jim Gordon dons a mechanical suit to become Gotham City's latest hero. Yeah, so if you notice, death is in quotes. So Batman, everyone thought he supposedly died, but for whatever reason, I think he was like at a... I don't know, like a psych ward or something, and he'd spend his afternoons feeding pigeons with the Joker. It was kind of weird. It's weird because they knew that they kind of were familiar with each other, but they're amnesiacs, and they were kind of becoming chummy with each other, but it was off, and they knew that for some reason or the other they had to hate each other. I mean, that's what I kind of remembered. So first impressions out of the box, my first thought is, I don't know why I never completed the King Shark figure. I remember wanting to, but I think I had difficulty trying to complete the set. I want to say I think Zoom might have been hard to find. Zoom or Batgirl, I couldn't remember. And I think I just didn't want to invest that kind of money because I was already collecting so many other lines, and this is a great figure. I kind of want to finish him. But, Build-A-Figures are so expensive on the secondary market. I wouldn't be surprised if I could find this guy complete for like $80 and above. But I might be able to piece them together cheaper. We'll see. So yeah, first impressions in the tray. I love it because I love the character, but at the same time, it's a very basic feeling, basic feeling kind of figure. There's not a whole lot of bells and whistles to this version of Batman. He comes with his, I don't think this is a grapple gun. I think in the comic book, Jim Gordon used this gun and it shot like batarangs, I think. The Build-A-Figure piece is nice. Oh man, look at the size of the leg next to the figure. It really makes me want to build that King Shark figure. You know, if I could find the pieces for a reasonable price, I'll do that, but I don't know. This is one thing I like about the figure too. This is almost becoming a lost thing because I'm not sure if I see it as often as I used to, but this style of like paint work, you know, where it's with the dry brushing to create this like denim texture, it's great. I'm not sure if companies do this as often as they used to, but for me it's such a cool thing. All right, so looking at Jim Gordon as Batman, the Superheavy figure, it's very bare minimum. This body, now when I talk about unique sculpts in my video, this is a character where the sculpt is in the mold is used multiple times over because it's a bare body essentially. There's no unique details sculpted into the torso or the arms. Excuse me, I had to take a swig of some water. I'm like losing my voice. I say this all the time. On my days off, I'll shoot like 10 videos and I'll just go straight through and my voice will be shot. So just bear with me. Yeah, so this is a very bare bones kind of figure. The sculpt and the molds used multiple times over. Like, you know, don't be surprised if this is the same body that you'll see on a Superman or like a Nightwing or something, or a Green Lantern. Like his emblem, it's not sculpted in, it's just painted on. Same with his rank insignia. The belt's very generic looking. It's just a ring of rubber or plastic. But it's nice though because, you know, like one of my pet peeves is that I hate it when you have these figures with guns and weapons, but there's nowhere to put them. But it's cool that you have a holster and you can put his gun there, or his grapple gun, or his batarang gun, or whatever the hell it is. One thing that bothered me with this figure also is that he kind of has like a lack of a neck. Either his head's too big or his neck's too short. I'm not sure if it shows well on the camera, but if you held this figure in person, you'd know what I'm talking about. There's just something off with his neck. The sculpting's okay. The details aren't as crisp. Like, there's a hint of musculature, but it's not as like pronounced or as ripped as, say, like maybe like a He-Man figure. But it doesn't need to be because this guy's wearing a bodysuit. And this is a generic mold. As I mentioned, this is a body they're going to use multiple times over on different superheroes. The black finish they use is nice. It's not super reflective. But at the same time, it's not super matte. The paint's nice and crisp on his bat emblem. There's no bleed or no smudging. Same with his rank. Nice head sculpt. I can't remember if they reused this Batman head on other figures. You know, knowing how they manufacture toys and reuse parts, I wouldn't be surprised if this head was used on like 10 different Batmans. There's some detail in his legs and his thighs and where his boots are. Now these easily look like these might be Superman's legs actually. You can kind of tell by the way the boots cut and detailed right there, how they kind of point up at the top of the boot. There's like, they don't have this figure. This is kind of like more of that archaic DC Classics kind of articulation where you can kick out, and then for them to kick it out to the side, it's not a ball joint. It's like a weird T articulated bar kind of deal, and it doesn't always feel smooth. And I don't like moving it because, truth be told, the DC stuff they had a lot of quality control issues with the Classics line. So for me, it's like sometimes some stuff is just left best untouched. And instead of having a thigh cut, it's cut above the knee for the twist, which it kind of sucks because it breaks the immersion a little bit more. It doesn't look as natural. You know, the muscles get out of line. I think it's better when you cut it at the thigh. And he has no boot cut. Ankles limited, up and down, and I don't think there's rocker on this. So yeah, I mean, this isn't modern engineering by any means. This definitely shows its age. But people were very fond of these figures, and I think they still are. I mean, every now and then I'll try hunting down some of these DC classics, and the prices go for a lot, and you see other people bidding on them, so, people still want to round out their collection. Okay, so if I had to rate this guy numerically, my first thought is a 7. It's nothing spectacular. The fact that I got him for less than retail, that just makes it a little bit more sweeter. If I paid $19 for this guy back in the day when he first came out, it would have been worth it just because, you're getting this Build-A-Figure piece. And if you haven't the intent of building King Shark, it's definitely worth it. You get a big-ass figure with this. But this is very bare bones. The nice thing about him being cheaper, too, is that if you're a customizer, this is a great base body. There's not a lot, with the exception of this band sculpted around his thigh, and just remove the belt. It's kind of pegged in right there, right below his belly button. Just remove the belt. And if you don't mind that, you can easily use this as a base body and sculpt on new details or just repaint them as someone else, which I have intention of doing. So, in keeping with the Batman theme, since this guy is very bare bones and a great base body, my hope and intention is that I have this spare John Stewart Green Lantern head from the McFarlane Green Lantern figure. I think this is a decent scale. I don't think it's... Now, this is from a 7-inch scale figure. This is a 6-inch scale figure. I'm kind of thinking I want to use this head on this body. I don't know if it's too big, though. Alright, because in keeping with the Batman theme, I'm kind of having visions of wanting to make the Duke Thomas Signal character. So this is Duke Thomas. If you read some of the Batman books, you might remember him from like We Are Robin. He's part of the Batman family now. He's known as the Signal. I'm not sure if that's what he's currently going by. But this was his costume. I like it a lot. It's kind of bare minimum. I'm kind of thinking that it's also very, very black with yellow on top of it. And since this is predominantly a black base body, I'm kind of thinking, painting in some of these details will be easy. It'll be easy for me to paint in the yellow forearms, the yellow boots, and paint over the emblem and just give him the yellow on the torso. And I'm going to go for the unmasked Duke Thomas look. And it's like right here. He's a much younger character, and his head does look a little bit older, but in my imagination, in my head, I'll just say this is like a much older version of Duke Thomas, and still taking up the mantle of the Signal. There's an older version of Duke Thomas. He's in the White Knight Batman comics, which are amazing. That's Sean Gordon Murphy's line of Batman books, and those are great. And that Duke Thomas is much older. He works for the Gotham PD, and in some of the more modern stories, he's been teaming up with Harley Quinn, who's kind of reformed, and I love that comic a lot. Give that a shot. It's awesome. So yeah, my hope is that I could take this figure and make a custom Signal. That's what I want to do. I don't think it should be that bad. I think if I spend like a weekend, I might be able to do it. The only things that always kind of concern me is this joint rub. But I might just keep the character static and not really move it around. And as I mentioned before, joint rub is when you paint stuff, but then when you move it around, the joints start rubbing each other, and then the paint starts coming off. So maybe I'll sand the shoulders down just a little bit to avoid that, but I don't know. I really want to make the Signal out of this figure, and I think I could do that. I'm not sure if I'll document the process. I might, just so I can share that with people. So just to give, if you're new to the world of customizing, you can see how I do things. So yeah, that's my future plan. So overall, how do I rate this figure? So like I said, I think a 7. It's nothing spectacular. If you can find them for cheap, get them. If you're fond or remember this comic run, it's worth picking up. I think the DC Direct version is much better because you get this figure plus the robot. So yeah, it's neat. So once again, thanks for dropping by. My name is Lou. I greatly appreciate you spending the time with me to look at toys. If you found anything useful or informative out of this video, cool. I mean, that's my intent. I just don't want to talk about action figures all the time and, just say, hey, this is great or whatever. I'd like to provide some sort of information that helps you make a better choice about whether or not you want to buy it. Or if you're like me, maybe you're a fan of the character or the comic books. And if I have a story I can share with you that you can relate to, that makes it, for me, makes the video worthwhile. Toys are a fun way to connect with other people. We all kind of have the shared experience of collecting them or playing with them or just, what the characters mean to us. So like I said, I hope you found something informative and useful from this. So once again, stop by anytime. You're always welcome, and I will talk to you later. Take care.